Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fantasy Table brought to you by the Blue Stable. It's a new NFL season, and we have finally returned. Um, we're happy to be back with you. I'm once again your host, Luke Verkamp. Um, I just love fantasy football, so I'm glad to be back. It's that time of year. And this year again with me is Austin Isaac. So, Austin, how are you doing?
Pretty good, man. It's good to be back. It's been too long.
It's been such a long time. And then also with both me and Austin tonight and for this whole season and hopefully forever is one of our other Blue Stable riders, Theo. Theo, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be a part of this team and keep track of the whole fantasy season. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, and Theo's a big stats guy. So if you're wanting some stats, you gotta go talk to him. Anyway, for tonight, we just want to talk about some of the bigger NFL news that's been going on this week, and then we're going to talk about our preseason week one takeaways. There's been some interesting developments with some of the players that we'll get to, but yeah, if you guys are ready, we'll just hop right on in. So, biggest news of the week is Alvin Kamara suspension news. There, it seems like forever ago because so many people have forgot already, but he like beat up somebody at the Pro Bowl and well after the Pro Bowl, not during the game. But either way, he got into some legal issues and there's never been any suspension hearing and it keeps getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And so it seems like there's going to be no suspension this year. It's just going to be pushed into next year. And then next up, Zach Wilson. He had a nasty injury. Everyone thought it was going to be a torn ACL. Thankfully, it seems like it's not. He had a knee surgery that was deemed a success. They're saying he's still probably going to miss some time, and they're not going to put him out until he's 100%, but it's going to be less than a year for what they're hoping. Bill Belichick is doing an experimental co-offensive coordinator position. Should we be worried about this for these fantasy players in the New York or the New England system? I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this because this is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is strange. I mean, but at the same time, it's like he's been pretty much the sole OC all this time that it's like it's almost weird to see somebody else calling plays for the offense. Um, Belichick calling plays is like kind of like a legendary thing at this point, but like it also kind of seems like he's kind of had like a little bit of a drop off ever since Brady left. So it's really gonna. I mean, it really is gonna be a more time to tell kind of thing because it's really gonna just depend on how well they can call these plays.
For me, should I be worried? I'm going to say just wait a bit, maybe till after the preseason. I know they struggled against the Giants. They lost, and they switched off Joe Judge and Matt Patricia. They switched off quarters or halves, I believe. I saw Mac Jones reports are saying that he's having growing pains in this new offense. I mean, you had Matt Patricia, who's only coached offense for the Lions 1 year. Joe Judge, who's historically a special teams coach. It's a weird dynamic, but I think if they get it right and they find a rhythm to it, it can work throughout the season.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Which I mean, New England's fantasy relevant players are mainly going to be the running backs because that's just been their success for the past however many years. Wide receivers there, like Jacoby Myers has shown flashes and stuff like that. They got Devontae Parker now. But yeah, it just seemed odd to me that they're doing Patricia, who has been a defensive guy, and just now like moving into a little bit of offense to now being and Joe Judge, who's a special teams guy. But hey, if it works for him, it works for him. If that's who they feel is the best for that position, that's the best for that position. So yeah, like Theo said, wait a little bit, see what happens. Maybe it turns out better than what people are thinking by that headline. And then speaking of the Patriots, since James White has retired, Ramondre Stevenson has been practicing in the James White role. Personally, I have already liked Ramondre Stevenson just because I'm not a big believer in Damien Harris. But what do you guys think about Stevenson? Do you think he's going to be somebody this year to keep your eye on?
First of all, I don't like the Damien Harris disrespect. I got to start off with that. There will be absolutely zero Damien Harris slander in this podcast.
I gotta side with Austin on that.
Yeah, thank you, Theo.
Sorry. I know I'm new. I shouldn't really pick sides, but
you wasted no time picking sides with that.
That snow game was too good. All right.
I personally always saw Damien Harris as the RB1. But Ramondre Stevenson practicing in that James White role essentially means that he's going to get more snaps. Regardless of how they're used, he's going to get more snaps. And when you're on the field, more snaps equals more production at some point. The only issue that I really have with that is that they have so many running backs at this point that it's almost like you don't know which running back to take with the Patriots usually. It's kind of just a week by week thing where out of nowhere, just one of the running backs is going to have just an amazing game. And then the next game, they'll get like two carries. Like there's no telling on what's going to happen. Damian Harrison was kind of like that last season. Ramondre Stevenson like that last season. And then this year they drafted Pierre Strong out of man, I was high on Pierre Strong coming out of the draft, and I can't remember where he went. It doesn't matter. I really liked him in college. Theo, do you know? Do you remember?
North Dakota State.
Yeah, North Dakota State. That's right. But yeah, I really liked him at North Dakota State because he's kind of got like that almost that power back kind of role, where the other two really are kind of like it's like lightning, thunder, and then just the light from I don't you can't really have all three there. But it's really going to be difficult with the Patriots running backs. I can't see which of them is going to be good on which particular week.
Yeah, I gotta say it's always a hit or miss, and you just gotta pick your poison sometimes on which one's going to be the one. Moving on though, Drake London had an injury as well, but thankfully they said it's not going to be a long-term thing, but it will sit him out this next week of practice and I believe the next preseason game. And then another interesting one, the Giants are going to be putting Tyrod Taylor out for some first team reps. I don't know if they did say Daniel Jones is still the starter. Obviously, they're going to say that. But is this them not like trusting in Daniel Jones enough, or are they just hoping Tyrod can maybe push himself further? Hard saying.
I kind of have a good comparison to this situation when Phillip Rivers came onto the Colts, right? Frank Reich came out and said that Jacoby Brissett will still be used in some fashion, in some way. And although both Tyrod and Daniel Jones are good runners, I feel like Taylor has this element to him where he just seems quicker, more agile, right? And sometimes you get to a point where there's going to be a veteran needed at the helm. I mean, Danny Dimes has been playing quarterback for a couple of years now, but you get my point in how Taylor sort of has the intelligence and the situational awareness to be put in some situations over Jones. So I can see why they're practicing for that situation, but when it all in the end, it's going to be Daniel Jones' starter.
See, I as much as I hate it, I kind of have to agree. It's probably going to be Daniel Jones at under center, week one. I do think Tyrod Taylor is a good quarterback. I think he's probably one of the best backups in the league. I think he is past his prime as a starter. You noted that Daniel Jones has been playing quarterback for a few years now, and that I do disagree with, because that and whatever he was doing was not being quarterback. That's for sure. Um, but I do think he will be under center week 1.
Yeah, I agree. It should be Daniel Jones over Tyrod, but you coaches love to just throw random stuff out there, see what happens. Um, anyway, breaking news. This just came across my sleeper alert, but Colts fans I know have already feared the worst. But Drew Ogletree, the camp standout, has officially torn his ACL, so he will be out this whole next season. Unfortunate, because he really was showing promise in training camp with the other tight ends in the room, but that is sad. I hate hearing that.
It all reminds me of Deion Kane a few seasons ago. He was having such a great camp and then tore his ACL it was like, God, it wasn't even like the first preseason game. It was like the first snap of the first preseason game. It's awful. Anytime you see somebody having such a great camp, somebody especially who's young and promising like that just has their season ended to something out of their control, it's awful.
I agree. Anyway, now that we're done with the NFL news, we're going to move on to the preseason week 1 storylines that we want to talk about. I'm going to start us off, and this has been hard for me, but if you guys followed us last year, you know my love for Gibson. You know me and Austin's love for Gibson. We really thought he was going to be a very good running back, which he has been. He's been good, but he led the league, or he led running backs last year in the league in fumbles with 6, and preseason fumbles on their second drive and doesn't come back in until the second teams are out there. Brian Robinson came in to finish the reps with the first team. He's had fumbling issues, which was part because he was a wide receiver in college for a long time and he transitioned to running back. So he's not really one of those guys that he's holding onto the ball tight. He can catch well and he can do other stuff well, but he's just not. He hasn't been a running back long enough to have that. And plus, Theo, thanks to Theo, he sent me a couple graphs earlier, and his Gibson's hand size percentile was 5%, which is not good. So yeah, I'm not too happy with where Gibson is trending right now. And they said that he has been practicing on the punt team this week, which is just more concern for me. Yeah, I'm just saddened.
Rest in peace, Gibbs season. I mean, he had such a strong rookie year, and every single year after that, you think this is it, and it hasn't been it, and it's crazy. Because I mean, last year the only reason he got so much hype is because Riverboat Ron was telling everybody that he was going to be that CMC role, and he wasn't at all, not a single time last season. And now you've got him. You know, J.D. McKissick was supposed to go to the Bills, I think, and then changed his mind, and then of course that just ruined everything because
I gotta say the Commanders matched that offer sheet is what happened, and so they brought J.D. back. They just gave him the same contract and brought him back, but then they also drafted Brian Robinson early, and it was just like, well, that's just the writing's on the wall,
burying him more and more. You really hate to see it.
All right, Theo, who's your first training camp takeaway that you got going on?
My first training camp takeaway is the Chiefs' first string offense. I watched parts of the game. I watched the first part of the game, first string. Really wanted to get visual on how that team might be run. And I thought it was really interesting. I mean, on paper, you kind of expect it to go this way, and it sort of did. And I guess I'll give a further explanation on that. I had a thought watching the Chiefs game that they're using 3 different wide receivers to replace Tyreek Hill. They got Juju Smith-Schuster taking on his volume. They got MVS taking on mostly the deep routes, and Sky Moore being the punt return guy and the gadget plays. That really goes to show how valuable Tyreek is. But it's also kind of cool to see how Andy Reid has now split this one massive dragon, I guess, into a smaller, like 3 smaller dragons. I don't know how you describe it, but I thought that was very interesting. Juju Smith-Schuster, what I have on him, he's the wide receiver 1. Like I said before, he's going to be taking a majority of the volume. He should be your guy other than Travis Kelce you target on this offense. MVS played his usual role, being targeted deep. He had a couple ones deep thrown by Mahomes, and he's good. Hopefully he fixes his catching problems that he had with the Packers. I feel like more work with Mahomes could definitely solve that. Nicole Hardman came in during the 3 wide receiver sets. So that was good news for that, like just production wise. However, though, today he did go down with a groin injury, I believe. Ian Rappaport tweeted about it. He was able to walk off the field, and he jumped on the cart too. All good signs. But that also leaves Sky Moore to be the next option to replace Hardman. And I'm starting to get a little bit more excited for Sky Moore. He had 3 catches and played as the punt returner. So when it comes time you're drafting, I'd say be alert on Hardman's status, because if that groin injury sort of stays persistent throughout preseason, I'm definitely putting Sky Moore on a higher radar. He's definitely going to be someone I target later in drafts. And fantasy Twitter's love child of Isaiah Pacheco. Everybody's raving about him. I mean, at first, I thought all the hype, it was all clamor to me until this weekend, where I saw him get first team reps right after Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then he was pulled out of the game early second quarter. That is eye-opening. If you have Andy Reid pulling out a guy early in a preseason game, that should be noted. He is going to be valued on this team. And if you don't target him very late in your drafts, he's a great candidate to be one of the big-time waiver wire pickups midseason. But what I have notes overall, the Chiefs' offense is going to experience increase in equity among its pass catchers. It's going to be very dispersed. Travis Kelce still going to be the top dog. If you want to be invested in the Chiefs' offense and their success, Travis Kelce has always been the way to go. The presence of Pacheco is exciting, and I know I said he should be on your radar. Just don't buy in too high. The Chiefs have used this split backfield I know they did with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and a couple other guys.
Yeah, like Derek Gore, Damian Williams, I think were a couple of them.
Yes. They've done the semi-split backfield. It's not quite 50-50. I mean, it's always slightly favored Helaire, but it's enough to have a negative impact that will diminish both the running backs to bench pieces. And that's what I got for the Chiefs game.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny tweets that I would see from some fantasy guys. They're like, I'm officially taking Isaiah Pacheco over Jonathan Taylor in my drafts. Like, he's the 101 now because of all the hype that was going on with him. But no, I totally agree with you talking about the wide receiver group. I do like Juju in drafts because he's being drafted as wide receiver 31 right now on Sleeper. And I don't think Mahomes wide receiver 1 is going to be the wide receiver 31. Like that's just not going to happen. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. But Yeah, Sky. Part of me wanted the Colts to draft Sky, but I'm happy with Alec Pierce as well. But yeah, Sky, I really like him coming out of college, and yeah, he's being on Patrick Mahomes' team helps him a lot. But,
I'm excited with I know Andy Reid's gonna have his trick plays that he pulls out. I'm wondering if he's gonna do somewhat of the same as he did with Tyreek Hill with Sky Moore. Maybe he's probably not gonna show off his trick plays during the preseason. So I'm really curious as to how Sky Moore handles it during the regular season.
yeah, that's hard to say, but he's definitely a guy that they could use him in that role. And not saying he's going to be Tyreek Hill or anything because that's pretty big shoes to fill, but he's definitely one of those guys that you can do a little like gadgetry with. Like kind of like how Kadarius Toney was used last year for the Giants and stuff like that. Just use him in some different plays, packages. Over to Austin. Let's see what you got.
So my my first guy that I've got this storyline going for is somebody who's been talked about quite a bit in recent memory here. And that is Odell Beckham Jr., OBJ. It's kind of just the storyline following him right now is where is he going to sign? It was very heavily rumored that he was going to go back to the Rams at first. That's kind of died down just a little bit. It's kind of toned down a little bit. Our own Sean McGinnis had a report out that the Colts were very, very interested in him. There were talks heating up there. Those also kind of died down a little bit. And then, of course, Von Miller on Instagram trying to recruit him to the Bills. So those are three very, very good teams of where he's going to end up signing more than likely. Of course, all those talks died down just mostly due to the fact that nobody knows when he's going to be back yet. You don't want to pay a guy if you don't know when he's going to play for you. If I had to guess, I'd probably say sometime mid-season. And you really don't want to sign a guy this early for the money that you're going to want to be giving to Odell Beckham Jr. if you don't, if you're not going to even get him until mid-season. But I really do think that obviously Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be wanting another ring. So he's going to be signing somewhere where he can win a ring, which means somewhere with a good quarterback, somewhere with a good offense. So, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where he's going to sign. He's more than likely going to produce because he's a really, really good receiver still.
Yeah, Odell is definitely one of those guys it's going to take a little bit before he's back on the field. But even then, he's still Odell Beckham Jr. We saw what happened whenever he went to the Rams last year. He's still got it in him. He still can be a fantasy relevant player. Where he ends up is a big question mark yet because, like you said, so many people are courting him kind of, but it all also depends on Beckham when he wants to sign because he could probably sign with any team right now if he wanted to, but I think he's waiting for the right opportunity, the right team, the right fit, and what's best for him at this point.
And I almost think that it would be better for Beckham to wait a couple of games. And I know it's going to pain a lot of people to hear that because the anticipation on where he's going to sign has always been high this offseason. But if that surprise team, I don't know, the Saints, they go on some miraculous run of 6 wins, 0 losses, they're undefeated, and Jarvis Landry goes down, or Chris Olave goes down. That's it right there for Beckham to jump in and take that role. So he does want to go to a Super Bowl contender, win another Super Bowl ring. But I also wouldn't count out the teams that could be surprises mid-season to be having an over 500 record, to grab Odell Beckham and elevate their team to become Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Like I say, a lot of it depends on his rehab and everything because nobody really knows right now what's going to happen. I don't even know if Odell knows what's going to happen right now. But moving on to my second guy, I'm going to be talking about Damien Pierce, Houston Texans rookie running back. He showed out this last week. He was the highest graded running back of the whole NFL week 1 of preseason. I know it doesn't mean much, it's preseason, whatever, but he played really well. He averaged 9.8 yards per carry, which is great. I know it wasn't like it was just like 2 carries and one of them was like 20 yards and the other one was like 2 yards. It was like he averaged 9.8. He looked good. His competition is very low. Like his competition right now is basically just Marlon Mack. David Johnson, I believe, still there. Rex Burkhead might still be there. They got a crowded running back room, but it's a lot of older guys that aren't really starter potential anymore. Marlon Mack would be the only guy that I could see starting over him. I know many of the Houston beat writers have been saying if Damien Pierce is not out there week 1 starting, then they are not putting out their best lineup. So he has been showing out in camp, I guess. I haven't seen all the reports, but I know they've been saying he's been looking good.
You know, I like Damien Pierce. I didn't like him as much as he apparently has been playing in camp and everything. I'm really glad to see that he's playing so well. I think a couple years ago, this is the guy that I thought I was going to see, but coming out of college last season, I didn't expect him to go undrafted or anything like that, but I didn't think that he was given the production that he had at Florida at the time, that I didn't think he was going to be fantastic. Given, granted, Florida doesn't have a fantastic offense or team in general to begin with. I'm glad to see he's doing well. I did want to see Marlon Mack in that starting role as a Colts fan, obviously. But I mean, if he gets beat out, he gets beat out. And then it almost doesn't surprise me to see Marlon Mack coming off of his torn Achilles, right? Not an ACL that he had a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he had Achilles.
Yeah. So, I mean, he may never be the back he once was. I think we've talked about it a couple times on the podcast, Luke. It's more so, it's not as much as his running ability as it is his vision that makes him a great running back. If Damien Pierce is going to come out and, be amazing with an ADP of running back 40, I mean, why not take that chance on him? With John Mechie out for the season, I mean, as much as you hate to see that situation that John Mechie is in right now, I could really see them leaning on the run a little more. If Lovie Smith doesn't really trust Davis Mills that much, which if I'm Lovie Smith, I would trust Davis Mills a little more than most people are giving Davis Mills credit for. I think he's a really, really good young quarterback, but that offense I feel like is going to be underrated for Houston this year. And I think Damien Pierce leading the pack is going to be huge for that Houston Texans offense.
I mean, my opinion on Damien Pierce, I wasn't really high on him coming out of the draft. He went into the Houston Texans, which was an open road for him to become the immediate starter. And more, I just keep rising him in my ranks. And it's becoming difficult to deny the possible volume that he may enter in the Texans role. Now, is he going to be a world beater, like a top 15 guy? I mean, maybe someday, but not this season. But I'm excited for him. I'm excited to see what he can do as a rookie running back 1 for that team, for sure.
Yeah, volume is king in fantasy football. Like you want those guys that get all the touches. Like Najee Harris, just on his touches alone, is what got him up there to the top 5 running back season. So, yeah, if you can get players that get touches, you're going to have success. Now, moving on, Theo, what's your second big storyline of the week?
My second biggest one, I'm going back to the Washington Commanders. I know you talked about Gibson, but this one is now about their wide receiver 2 battle. The Jahan Dotson versus Curtis Samuel. it's interesting. So I want to start off with a couple stats. So the Commanders brought in Carson Wentz after the train wreck of last season. Surprised anybody still wants him, but it's just my opinion. Anyway, half PPR, the wide receiver 2 with Wentz's quarterback in the last 2 years was Pascal with the Colts, 74.3 points total in 15 games, and Travis Fulgham with 96.9 total points in 13 games. Now let's go over to Scott Turner, who is the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. His last 2 years with wide receiver 2s on the team, DeAndre Carter had 73.4 total points in 16 games, and Cam Sims with 70.2 points in 16 games. So that sort of averages out to about a high 60, low 70 range for wide receivers. Not good. Not good, but there's something special about this year, though, with those two. And it makes it difficult to see how it will play out. Dotson's case, in his preseason game, he played with the first team. He lined up outside opposite of McLaurin, but he only had one target that game. Well, it was taken away due to pass interference, but it was on a deep ball. So it's cool to see Wentz target him that way. I know he's been killing it in camp, but that was just his preseason stats. The quality of his snaps during the preseason, of him strictly being the first team, that was surprising. Probably not to Commanders fans, but to fantasy fans, that is a good thing to note. Curtis Samuel and his points, he said during the beginning of training camp that he feels good and he feels fast, which is nice reassurance for a player who's been mostly plagued with injuries throughout his career. He's going to be the yak guy on that team out of the slot. And Scott Turner put him a lot in motion through that preseason game. And I think it's a good sign. It shows that the offense is comfortable with him and they can use him as a threat to defenses with his versatility. I love that. Now, to decide which one is going to be the wide receiver 2, a lot of people like the newest toy in the market. I get it. Dotson, like I said, has been lighting up at camp this offseason, but I don't think Samuel's talents should be overlooked. Dotson's position on the field, his snaps quality is good. It makes him the favorite, I believe, for wide receiver 2, but always keep in mind the price between the two wide receivers. I think that's where the decision really gets tough. You have Dotson as 190 overall, late 15th round average, wide receiver 69, half PPR ADP. Curtis Samuel, drastic difference, 238 overall, going undrafted, wide receiver 81. Those positions at ADP, the gap is massive in that. And I want both of you guys talk about what's your thoughts on the gap between Dotson and Samuel, and who do you think is going to win out for the wide receiver 2?
I think I know who Austin likes more, just based on some things. But I mean, we got to think Curtis Samuel just 2 years ago put up the wide receiver 25 finish, and that was with Teddy Bridgewater as his quarterback. So, I mean, it's not like he is a nobody or anything. He's a very talented, very good player whenever he's healthy. I know he's been dealing with that groin issue for a while now, but if he is fully healthy, I almost would prefer him just for the more upside that he would have than Jahan Dotson, even though Jahan Dotson also has his own, he has a decent upside as well, but he is also a rookie wide receiver. But it's really close because it doesn't hurt you too much if you're taking Dotson and he isn't the wide receiver 2 because you're getting him in the 15th round. But I'd almost rather go with Samuel because I've seen it before with Samuel, and I think he has a little more upside, in my opinion.
Jahan Dotson is by far and away the better player than Curtis Samuel. No, I'm just kidding. It's definitely Curtis Samuel should absolutely be the wide receiver 2 for the Washington Commanders. Call me crazy, but I wanted Chris Olave to fall to the Commanders so we could have that Ohio State trio for Carson Wentz this year. You want to talk about Washington running backs like we were talking about earlier with Gibson and McKissick and the abundance of running backs they have. Something that a lot of people don't talk about is that Curtis Samuel in Carolina wasn't just a wide receiver. He was that wide receiver running back hybrid. He kind of was that Deebo Samuel before Deebo Samuel, which is that role he played at Ohio State. He was an H-back at Ohio State. He had that, snaps out of the backfield as well as snaps like in the slot on the outside. I mean, he played everywhere for Ohio State. And that's really where he shows best. When he gets the ball in his hands, he can make some people miss. He can do a lot with that. I do like Jahan Dotson a lot. I'm not going to front. Is one of my favorite receivers. He's a guy that I really, really, really wanted the Colts to draft. And but I do think if Curtis Samuel can stay healthy, like Theo said, more than likely he's going undrafted. I think that he is absolutely somebody you want to grab after that draft is over and just store him away just in case. Because if this is the year that he actually can stay healthy, I mean, the sky's the limit for him. It really is. But I do think that he can be that wide receiver too if needed. And I'd really like to see that happen because I have drafted Curtis Samuel in every single one of my fantasy drafts for the last 2 years and I've been tossed away because of it. So I really hope that this is the year for him.
Yeah. So that's our takes for preseason week 1. I know there's plenty of other storylines that are going around. I mean, there's just so many that we could have talked about, but we can't be here all night. We have to have a time limit eventually. But yeah, so that's week 1 for us. Do you guys have anything else that you want to talk about before we end the show? Not really. Guess not. Either way, yeah, no, you all good.
I'm glad the first episode I'm in it. I had fun today. It was a great time.
Good
It was
time.
a good first episode, Theo. It really was.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you on. We're glad to hear your knowledge, pick your brain of all these little stats that you got going on that you find. But yeah, it's going to be a fun season. We are hopefully all going to be here every single week this year. Cross our fingers. I know I've got a busy schedule. I know we all do. We're all humans. We all got our own stuff going on. But I really like what we got going on this year. We will make sure that we try to get at least an episode out every single week for you guys. We don't know what day we're going to be posting yet during the season. We are still working out that schedule. But for now, we're just doing a couple shows here during the preseason to kind of give you some of our takes on some of the bigger storylines. Follow us on Twitter at Luke Verkamp. I know I was at Big Verkamp last year. I'm at Luke Verkamp now, at the Austin Isaac, and at Theo Franz 14. So follow us on there. Also follow us at the blue_stable. We'll be posting the episodes on there. But we'll all be posting some fantasy content on Twitter here and there throughout the season. Going to try to use that space more often for like waiver pickups and stuff like that. So follow us on there. And if you guys have any closing remarks, now's your time. Hold your peace.
Just excited for the season. I think season 2, episode 1 of this podcast is going to be a banger. I really feel like it.
Yeah.
And the rest of the season, we got Theo in here, got Luke in here. I mean, this is the dream team right here for fantasy. This is where you want to be for your fantasy information.
We got you all covered. But either way, everybody, I hope you have a good day, good night, good morning, whatever it is you're listening to it. We appreciate you. Make sure to go subscribe down below. Go ahead and like the video, all that fun stuff that everybody says. We're trying to get to 1,000 followers At 1,000 followers or subscribers, not followers, 1,000 subscribers, we are going to give away a Colts jersey of your choice. So go subscribe. It's free to enter. You get a free jersey. What's the risk? You might as well just do it. Either way, until next week, we'll see you guys.